Welcome back to my channel. I am on week 14 or week 15 of my pregnancy journey. We will talk about that later, why I'm not sure, but we'll focus on week 14 updates. So for week 14, the baby is about the size of a navel orange, which is about 4 inches. So the baby's definitely getting bigger, only about 2 ounces. So still a lightweight, but getting a little bit bigger in the tummy. And the reflexes have developed. So when I went to my OB visit this week and had my ultrasound, the baby actually reacted as soon as my OB put the ultrasound device on my belly. It was kind of funny because I didn't feel it, but I could hear it in her monitor. And so it happened, 1 or 2 times that she would take the device away, put it back on my tummy, and then I hear this like rumbling sound and I had no idea what it was. So I kept looking at my doctor like, what is that? And she's like, baby's reacting, baby's responding to this pressure that we're putting, on the tummy a little bit. So these are reflexes that the baby now has. So I thought that was super cool because I cannot feel the baby moving at all. And they tell you like, oh, after the first baby, once you're a mom, once you've had your baby, you now know what it feels like to have those flutters. You now know when the baby moves. So you'll be able to detect earlier when the baby is starting to kick or move. I haven't felt anything. Kelvin swears he feels something every time he touches my belly. But no, there is nothing that I feel externally, at least. And so it was really cool to hear not only the baby's heartbeat again, which was really strong. She said it was about 160, but hearing the movements and hearing the baby react to us kind of invading its privacy or probably sleep time. So what's up with me as far as symptoms? I am moving into the 2nd trimester, but I don't feel like it. I still feel like I still have a little bit of the gagging reflex that I've had all of the 1st trimester. I still feel a little bit of GI tummy uneasiness from time to time. So one thing I will tell y'all that I learned this week and my OB confirmed. So the 3 things that if I have any tummy uneasiness, I'll either have some milk and magnesia, I'll have just some Tums, the chewable Tums, which are so yummy, pop them like candy. And then every now and then if I need some Colace, then I'll use that as well. So she told me you should not combine all these because the Tums actually gives you constipation, but the good news is the milk of magnesia counteracts that. The bad news to that is that if you take the Colace, which is a stool softener, then you can end up with diarrhea. So you're not supposed to combine those. All 3 are safe during pregnancy. She confirmed that again yesterday, but you want to make sure you're just not necessarily combining all of those together. So don't learn the hard way like I did. So you guys know that I was a little nervous about this appointment with my OB this week because I wasn't sure about what I felt was like a lump in my left breast. And you guys, my doctor totally assured me that it is nothing. It's all in my head. And she did a very thorough breast exam again and really focused on the left side. And I kept telling her it's the lower side that I feel just some tightness, a bit of a lump area. And she told me, well, when you're feeling it, you're squeezing your breast tissue together. So it feels thick because your milk ducts are present and you can feel that along with your growing milk tissue. So she said, your breast tissue. So she said, that's the reason why I was feeling, any type of lump or what I thought might have been like an early milk clog or something. Because again, I experienced mastitis multiple times with both babies. So I know what it feels like to have one of your milk ducts stopped up. And I thought I was feeling that, even though I didn't have pain or redness or swelling or anything like that. I just wasn't sure. And so she assured me that it was nothing. She compared the right and the left. My right is smaller than my left one. And so that's why the tissue feels a little bit softer on that side, just a little bit tougher on this side because it's a bigger breast and it just has more breast tissue. So she quelled all those fears and I have nothing to worry about. It was all in my head. The other thing that was in my head, remember I told you guys my right eye was twitching? It actually has been twitching off and on for the past 2 weeks. And today I feel nothing, which is weird because when I went to the doctor yesterday and I asked her about it, she's like, no, that's not a pregnancy thing. I was like, but what if like there's a nerve that the baby's sitting on and that nerve is connected? She was like, mm-mm. And then I woke up today with no eye twitching. So go figure. The only other thing is just the numbness in my extremities, mostly my fingers, not my toes. And again, I remember that with my first 2 pregnancies. So I expect that to last throughout the rest of the pregnancy. It just gets you in the middle of the night when it wakes you up and you're like, something's wrong. What's this tingling I'm feeling? But I just raise my arm and have the blood pressure kind of retract back. The issue is that the baby takes all of my blood. And so a lot of times when you're asleep, if you're sleeping the wrong way, you're laying on your hands or your hands are maybe under your head or something, then that blood flow says, well, we're not needed here, and it goes to the baby. So nothing to be worried about, no issues there. So you guys know I took my NIPT test. I did a Panorama, which is a non-invasive prenatal test. I have my results back and everything looks great. I am considered low risk, praise God. It's what I expected, but you know, you never know. I talked to my doctor about it and I'm like, okay, so my genetics don't change, you know, from baby to baby. So, you know, what is it that they're specifically looking for when they run this test from my blood sample? And they're really looking at baby's DNA. So it's super cool technology that allows them to separate mom's DNA from baby's DNA and specifically research baby's DNA for any genetic anomalies. Trisomy 21 is the one that most people are familiar with because it's a genetic marker for Down syndrome. But there are a couple others that are included in the test, and that's trisomy 18 as well as 13. Those are also genetic disorders that lead to intelligence issues with babies and sometimes shortness of lifespan as well. Those are less of a risk. So I will tell you guys, trisomy 21 Down syndrome shows a risk of 1 in 68. Now, I don't know if that's 1 in 68 women in general, or if it's 1 in 68 women who happen to be African American or in my age range. I'm actually not sure about that. But what I do know is the risk before the test is 1 in 68, very high risk. After my test, it's less than 1 in 10,000. So I'm extremely low risk for any of these conditions. I love seeing that check mark and that low risk right there. One thing that also is there, fetal sex is not reported. And so I'm thankful that they remembered that I didn't want to report it. I am a little nervous though, because when I went to my OB appointment, she opened up my chart and she's like, okay, we got your NIPT results. Everything is fantastic. You're low risk for everything. Baby's low risk. And then she looked at my chart and she's like, oh, what's this? And it was a little yellow sticky note like someone had written on there. And so she opened it up and she looked and she's like, well, you don't want to know the gender, right? You guys told me last time you don't want to know the gender. And I said, oh, that's correct. And I said, I got my report back from Panorama and they did not fail me. They didn't put the gender on there. So yeah, I definitely don't want to know. And she's picked up the little yellow sticky and was like, oh, then we don't need this, and tossed it in the trash. I usually am very inquisitive. I need to know everything. I didn't ask her anything in that moment because I was like, oh my gosh, they must have told her, they must have reported it to the doctor, even though I didn't want to report it to me. And someone, you know, maybe one of the nurses had written it down on a note in my chart. So my doctor now knows the gender, I believe. I didn't even ask her because I was like, I don't even want to know if you know, but we'll see. So I also had my ultrasound with my perinatologist, and that was exciting as well because it was my first visit this pregnancy to the perinatologist. Again, I'm AMA, advanced maternal age, which means old in medical terms. And because of that, I'm referred to an OB specialist who is a maternal fetal medicine doctor. And so they do additional testing. They duplicate some of the testing that's involved in the NIPT test, I've noticed. And I asked, I said, well, why, you know, this NT, when they do the back of the neck looking for Down syndrome, I said, well, I know that I got my results back this week. And so I know I'm low risk for everything. So why do I need to do this again here? And the ultrasound tech actually explained to me that it's a state thing, which I thought was very interesting. So for the state of California, there are certain requirements based on the size of the baby, and what they're looking for are genetic disorders. And if they are found and they're completed before you do an NIPT test, or instead of doing an NIPT test, if your results come back positive, then the state will cover the cost of any genetic counseling that you're gonna need afterwards, anything after as far as the medical care that you may need, which I thought was interesting because I was like, well, wouldn't my insurance cover that anyway? And she's like, well, generally no. So again, very complicated. I think I'm going to do a whole different talk on just state rules and state applications and just some of the maternity funding and all that. I've learned all that the hard way, but I've learned it all. So I would love to share that with you guys as well. But I just thought that was interesting. Thankfully, I again tested low risk for Down syndrome. So even though I did the NIPT before I did this first trimester California NT test, thankfully I didn't test positive for Down syndrome because I got my NIPT test before I had this first trimester California test, which tests for NT, which is like nuchal translucid something. So they're looking at the spine, and if there's a certain presence of this fluid, then it gives them an indicator that there may be Down syndrome. So then typically they would have then possibly sent me to get an NIPT test anyway, just for confirmation. And again, the state would have paid for it as opposed to my insurance. So interesting, I thought. Anyway, I couldn't even get it today, which is bringing me back to when I said 14, 15 weeks. I couldn't even get that NT test ordered today or completed today by the sonogram tech because she indicated to me that the baby is measuring about a week larger than my due date shows. I was like, what? So she then quickly, like it was nothing, was like, oh yeah, your due date changed. It's a week earlier. Now, mind you, my OB had already changed my due date by 2 days. And again, when I say changed, I'm just basing the due date off of the first day of my last menstrual period, which I did with both of my other kids. And it was pretty much a science, pretty reliable. But this time, apparently babies, I don't know if the size is just slightly larger than what they're expecting at a certain time point for it to be within the first trimester. So that's what the sonogram tech told me. And she said, again, it was a state thing. So I'm like, well, we're not talking about state right now. We're talking about just me and my health. So I was like, so why would I not still just be 14 weeks despite not being able to get that test because I'm measuring at 15 weeks. But she said they're part of USC. I guess it's publicly funded. So I got to ask more questions, get some more information. I'm going to confirm with my own OB because I want to know, like, what is my due date? What is my actual due date? Are we just estimating right now just because of the baby size, or can we still rely closer on the first day of my last menstrual period? So that's a question I'm going to ask in my next visit. But for now, my due date has changed twice. First by 2 days, then by another 7 days. So I don't know. This baby's going to end up being a June baby instead of a July baby. I will say one thing I loved about my sonogram tech. She took some amazing pictures. So this one, if you guys can see, I know there's a glare. It's the baby belly. I love this one. And the little legs are just crossed. He or she just kept moving during the whole visit. And so she was trying to get some different angles. This one is a foot. As you can see, like this is the leg and this is the foot. And the baby kept stretching his or her leg out and then pulling it back, just reflexing back and forth, which was kind of funny. And then this one, you can't see, she put the words hi mom and dad on this one because this is the baby. This is like if you look at like the skeleton, this is the baby's arm and this is a baby's little hand right there. So it's almost like baby saying hello. And this one is just full profile. These two are full profile pics. So she took some really good pics. I've had some sonogram techs or ultrasound techs who were maybe in a rush. For them, they see dozens of babies a day. So they don't always take the time to get precise pictures. And my girl was awesome. So loved her. Well, that's it for this week. Again, that was a lot. This is one of my bigger weeks. And it's probably because I'm combining week 14 with week 15 and I didn't even know it. Speaking of which, so I am starting to slightly, like ever so slightly show. You guys may not be able to tell, but I have on a dress because it's like 80 degrees in Cali in the winter today. So, but there's something here. I mean, not really nothing, but I know it's a little something. Well, thank you guys for joining me this week. I look forward to seeing you next week. If you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting on? Please do so. And I can't wait to see you next week.